Hello, I am Raymond Posch, and welcome to a new episode of New Ways of Being. And with me today, I have someone that's I think, going to provide a fun conversation for us today. His name is Christopher Miller. He is an artist, an author, a speaker. Um, his book that's out now, and I don't know when that came out. You'll have to tell us, CJ. The name of the book is The Spiritual Artist. And what we're going to talk about today, though, that is new for me in this show, I don't think I've focused on this before, is talking about the subject of creativity related to spirituality, or how our spiritual life or our everyday life relates to creativity. So I think this is going to be fun. CJ, on the wall behind you there, I see uh, some artwork, and I assume that's your painting. Is that true?
Yeah, it's one of my paintings. I'm sitting in my studio. I integrated my office and my painting room together just in January of this year. I
Oh,
decided to integrate my whole self and mix my my computer and all into the painting studio. One person.
well, that works. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about yourself, and you know what your story is, what led you to be the person you are today, and what you're doing. And I think the audience will be very interested. So, give us the 3 or 4 minute version.
It all started on a small farm. No, actually, I'll give you, yes, I'll shorten the version. I started painting in the year 2000 after years and years of not being creative. I had a kind of a, I'll be honest with you, I had a traumatic experience with an art teacher when I was very young, and I was kind of shamed in front of,
Hmm.
and I kid you not when I say this, 1,000 students at the Carnegie Mellon Art Institute when I was about 10.
Wow.
And I walked out of that environment. And I said, I will never do art again. And I did not do art until I was in my 30s. I just avoided it. Um, the book itself, I wrote the book called The Spiritual Artist, and it's on Amazon. It is about my journey back to being an artist, as well as my journey back to recognizing a greater power. This likewise, I had that bad experience in an art class. I was raised Catholic, very passionate. I would go and teach CCD. When I was 15, I was teaching CCD. I was painting the hallways. I was helping the church. And then I started realizing that as I grew into sexual maturity, I started realizing I was gay. And and I was watching, and the minister up there would be saying these terrible things about what it is to be gay. And and so at the same time, I walked out of the church and stopped teaching, stopped communicating, and I kind of really stopped having a relationship with any spiritual relationship at all with a God or whatever name you want to call it. So I kind of turned away from both. So the summation is the book is about using art as a way to remember who you are,
Hmm.
remember your relationship, and also to get into that place of flow. I think we talked about this in the pre-call, and it does apply to every discipline. I've had people reach out to me that are musicians, that are actors, that do fiber art, that do pottery, and they have found that the book has been really helpful for them.
Well,
So
good.
we
Good.
talked about you having some musical inclination. So
Yes. I've never done much in terms of like artistic painting, but I have been uh, a musician. I play guitar and sing, and I've done that most of my life. In my case, when I turned 10 years old, I had been hearing such great folk music and, well, and other types of music as well on the radio. And I grew up on a farm in Missouri, and I went out and bought a cheap guitar, taught myself to play guitar, and I still play today. well, I just did it off and on throughout my career. But after I retired a few years ago, 2 years ago, I decided I'm going to start performing folk music for seniors at senior facilities around Denver. And so now I've been doing that for about 2 years. I love it. The seniors love it, and um, you know, I find it very enjoyable, and I love the music. But there's something special about doing that music for seniors who love the music and grew up with it, but rarely hear it anymore. And so they are very appreciative. And yeah, that's my art.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I do some part-time work at a senior facility, and the rabbi got my book, and he likes my book, and he had me come in and present to the
Oh,
community. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little nervous. I thought, well, is this too forward thinking? What's it going to be like to present to them? They were fantastic. I was amazed when I started talking. They were tracking everything I said. They were asking me these wonderful questions. What does it mean to feel spirit when you create? Wonderful experience. So I imagine it's
that's,
rewarding for you as well.
yeah, that's great. And I don't think I've mentioned this casually before in my shows, doing my folk music, but I've never really talked about aspects of it. One thing that I decided to do right when I started was to be a voice for love as well as a performer. And so many times I will end my show with just a few statements about um, the importance of holding love in your heart and your mind, and I point out for them, and I actually give them a very brief description of how they can do that, recognize when they're not feeling loved, when they're unhappy, upset, worried, angry, whatever the case might be, and to recognize that, and then to choose love instead. And I always tell them, the more that you can do that, they will find that they will be happier, healthier, and see the world in a much better light. And they always respond totally positive to that. And I've written a song called Love is Our Way that I perform for them sometimes. And they love that song too. So the message of love is an important message that the world needs. I think that, we don't typically hear it too much in the news.
Yeah, we don't. Not
No,
lately.
no. Now, I take it that you somewhere in between you had a career doing something else altogether different.
Yeah, I did marketing and promotions, but I do want to talk. I want to follow up with what you just said about love. So what the book is about, when I would go and stand in front of the easel, I started wondering how come, like you just said, why would I have a wonderful experience one day and the next day a not so good experience? And I love what you just said, because I believe that when we are in a state of love, we receive guidance from spirit the most clearly. Now, so I want to clarify that God, spirit, a greater power is always speaking to us, but we listen. I think we listen better when we're feeling love for others, for ourselves, for what we're doing. We hear
Yes,
that message.
yes. Well, I agree 100%. And in fact, going back several years ago, I've done shows on focusing on love. And one of the things I realized was that, I learned from Marianne Williamson in her book on love, um, and other things that she's done, other books that she's written as well, about the importance of that. Of we tend, almost everyone tends to get wrapped up in life and a lot in the negatives of life, life. And so most people see life as a struggle, we're always working to have enough money, or to pay the bills, or we're upset about what the boss said to us, or,
Right.
all those kinds of things that occur in life. And, um, and it is so powerful then to have to develop the state of awareness, the level of awareness, self-awareness enough that we can recognize that we are not at our optimum, just like you said. And but to recognize that and then to respond. And the most powerful choice is to respond by holding love within ourselves, to think loving thoughts, to feel love. And actually, most people think that love is an emotion, but in reality, in its truest form, and I'm talking about unconditional love,
Right.
um, that it is a state of consciousness. So when we shift to a higher state of consciousness, vibration in with love, um, yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah, you reminded me when you said that of I think we do ourselves a disservice because we don't have very many names for the word love, right? We try
Yes,
to especially in the English language, we try to apply it to so many things, and it's not. And you're right. When you said that, I was thinking love is a presence. It's a presence that you can hold, a state of consciousness that you practice that, holding that presence. And before we had this phone call, we talked about the importance of I was talking about spiritual practice. When you get up first thing in the morning to sit down and hold that feeling of love, just and that can be as simple as just sitting on your deck and looking out at a tree and seeing a bird and just
right,
appreciating it. Right. Yeah.
right. Absolutely. And that's what I love. I do a walk every morning, and it's around my neighborhood, or neighborhoods actually. And I walk for 30, 40 minutes pretty briskly, just for exercise. But I always love paying attention to nature. And we are fortunate in this neighborhood. There are a lot of trees. I see birds and animals, rabbits, occasionally foxes, and um, but just to stop and kind of for a moment and appreciate that gift of nature, and it's and beauty too. That uh, if we don't stop and appreciate it, then we're doing without.
I
So,
agree. I agree. It's funny. I found nature to be my first way of entering it too. And I continually try to stretch that into newer ways. One of the ways that I find is looking at light, you know,
mm,
and because I've had people come to me and say, well, I don't live in a nice neighborhood, or I live in a crowded city, or,
right,
and I'm like, no, it's there. It's there. Don't think God isn't speaking to you, but like you can see it. Like I'm looking at the screen behind you and I see this reflection on your glasses. I see the soft reflection on the globe behind you.
uh-huh.
And there's a beauty to it. And I think so when I say spiritual artist, it's about learning to see that. Look for it. Look for it
Yes,
all
I
day
was
long.
I was going to say that's definitely the artist in you to pay attention to the light.
Yeah.
I live in Colorado, and the Colorado sky is so beautifully blue. Um, and definitely I prefer the sunlight and the blue sky to gray. But Colorado's got sunshine most days. But yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's an important part of spiritual awakening, is to awaken to not only what's within us, but to the world around us, and to appreciate it and hold even gratitude for all of that.
Yeah.
You're bringing up many good points, and we could we
I'm
could.
sorry.
I think this is going to be a kind of a scattered conversation here, but
I'll let you go. I'll let you go.
well, one of the points that you brought up there was spiritual practice, and
Yes.
and for most spiritual seekers, that becomes a very key part of spiritual growth, is having some practice, in either in daily meditation or contemplation, or other spiritual practices, chakra exercises, yoga, many different things. And I've had a spiritual practice over many years, and for me, most of it was in I turned my morning walks into meditative walks. I started out being contemplation of spiritual topics, spiritual ideas, and then I found that I could meditate while I was walking. You have to have a part of your mind on where you're going, etc. But you can meditate. You don't have to be sitting down with eyes closed. But the thing that I've come to understand in more recent years is that in some ways the awakening process is such that it's good to get to a point where maybe we don't have that structured spiritual practice anymore, that we're attending more to our own awareness in life unfolding. I don't know. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I still I find that if I don't have it structured, I start weeding it out, like I start ignoring it. I have made it a practice as I've gotten more and more self-aware to take the first, usually it's an hour, to be honest with you. I used to be 30 minutes, and it's nothing big. I'll have a cup of tea and I'll sit calmly. I'll read something inspiring. I love reading meditation books or Buddhist books, and just focusing on a sentence or two. I was talking to my son the other day, and I said to him, you have to plan that in your schedule. And the best way, and I also do yoga, and on my calendar, I just filled in the 3 slots where I go to yoga class, and I put it on repeating, so that every week, because if I don't, I'll schedule something over it.
Yep. And that's a totally valid point and perfect point. Yeah. All of us operate in different ways, and that's a good way to make the time. And
Yeah,
it
because if
does,
I, yeah.
and what is so important, I think, is having times in the day where you can be more attentive to the present moment and quieting the mind. And so yoga can be a great way of doing that. Meditation can be a great way of doing that. I do meditate while I'm walking. But self-awareness, I think, is the core thing. And I've been saying this for years now, the core thing in spiritual development, spiritual growth, and certainly in awakening. Awakening depends totally on becoming more and more in the state of awareness as opposed to thinking. And I think many people are not really clear on the distinction between the two, and they're totally different.
It is different. I was just reminding myself that this morning. I'd call it the difference between doing and being. And so for me, being is about, like you just said, holding that presence of love, just being an appreciative state. But I am such a doer. I come from a German ancestry, and my parents, work, work, work. If you're not producing, something, then there's a problem. But I think we can produce something just by being, which is a foreign concept to many. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Being is, if you want to experience life in a more powerful, enjoyable way, I've learned it is to shift more into being as opposed to doing. Because doing is, in a sense, is a trap. I mean, obviously we have to live in the world and we have to do things, but when we're totally focused all of the time on doing, we don't pay any attention to our being states. And in fact, we don't pay attention to, we know, so many people are unhappy. They know they're unhappy and they don't know what to do about it. Well, one of the things is to make time for self-awareness, for getting quiet, and for being more than doing, and to focus on, make happiness a priority, a
Right.
choice. And
It
happiness is a state. It's a state of being, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. It was a big concept for me to realize, you can choose happy, right? You can choose happiness. And so you sit there and think, okay, so something's happening. I'm stressed out because I'm sick. You have two choices. You can be unhappy in that sickness, or you can try to find happiness in the sickness. And then people are like, what? Well, you pamper yourself. You say, okay, I'm going to be happy that I lay in bed all day. Okay,
yep,
and try to find that appreciation in where you're at.
right. Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic point because most people uh, think about happiness as I will be happy when,
When
when this happens, so that I have this much money or whatever, that I'm taking great vacations, 4 times a
right,
year, right? Whatever. But no, you can make it a choice. You can be happy all the time. You
yeah,
simply have to find out within yourself and to choose it,
yeah.
right?
It's funny. I'll tell you this morning. I I had COVID in January,
Oh,
and
wow.
I do think it hangs with you. Um, and I've had these moments of being tired, still moments of tiredness. So this morning I got up and I did my meditation, and then I start painting, and I'm just feeling like my arm is tired. And of course your mind can get dark. And
Right.
then I reminded myself, okay, okay, so your arm is tired. So in this moment, I am not full of energy. That's okay.
Because,
And be happy with that instead of pushing against it. See, I push against it.
mhm,
I want to
right.
try to make it pain. And I'm like, what if I just sit down, take a breath? The
Yep.
dog came over, sat on my lap. It's okay. So I'm
Yes.
tired, right?
Yeah. One of the big lessons I've learned, and I have to admit, it's not been until fairly recently, the last couple of years, that it is you reach a whole new level when you can um, accept life as it is, accept the problems as they are, and to stop resisting them. Resistance is what makes life unpleasant. But if you can understand, oh yes, this kind of problem is going to come up. It's how I respond to it that matters. And if I can stop and open up, okay, I'm going to stop resisting it. It's here. I'm going to look at it and say, what is the best thing that I can do about it now? Or otherwise just accept it
Yeah.
and go
Love
on.
that where someone tells you, you look at it and you go, isn't that interesting? Right?
Yes.
Isn't that interesting that I'm tired today and my arm doesn't want to paint? Interesting, but be in that curious place, right? And
Yes, exactly.
when you're in that curious place, and I also believe, like you said so early on, and you're in a state of love, you'll get that divine inspiration. That idea will come to you, and maybe that idea is to just sit on the couch, or maybe the idea is that you don't really need to be doing that painting right this minute. You
Yes.
know, we don't know.
Oh, okay. I want to come back to creativity. And I know that's a big part of what you talk about and write about. I want to make one more point on what you just said.
That's a good thing. That's a
Yes.
good thing.
And you know, actually, I over a lot of years, I was totally left brain person. um, very technical, very much into to the doing part of managing projects. That was my career, project management in IT. And uh, so what I guess what I when it came to spiritual practice, I really struggled for many years with. I felt I didn't have any intuition, and uh, and I had a hard time stopping and connecting and having that connection with spirit. And even when I focused on love and my heart, I still struggled with that. And you have to get there are a couple things involved. You do have to raise your level of vibration, I think, before that really begins to happen. And pure unconditional love can definitely help with that. It automatically raises. But I've learned now that I have to open and allow that flow to happen, whether it's a dialogue with God or with the angels or energy guiding me, motivating me and guiding me that way. So yeah, I even though everyone says, yeah, God's talking to us all the time, I think there are many people like myself that struggled with that, with trying to hear God and not hearing God.
I say, okay, I'll respond to that. I love what you said. I actually had these bracelets made. I do art retreats, and it says, listen, listen, because what you just said is, and I really think it's so important for us to learn to listen. I do believe that I get away from the semantics of the name of this greater power,
Mm-hmm.
but when spirit is speaking to us, we have to listen. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're talking about I think it was always there. I will tell you, God was always there. You
Right.
just weren't cued into it.
Right.
One of the things I put together, I don't know if you've ever followed Abraham Hicks. She talks about a vibration, of having your vibration. She describes it as being on I love this metaphor, a radio dial. And the
Mm-hmm.
younger generation won't recognize that because they have
Right.
digital, but a radio dial where you had to be exactly on the
Yeah.
signal, right?
Right.
Well, I kind of came up with, when I was painting, I realized that there's not a radio dial, but I have an emotional dial that I developed. And on one side, I used colors to represent the dial. And so green is in the middle. That's where you are in state of love. You're
Mm-hmm.
in gratitude, you're in
Yep.
appreciation, and you're present. But way over here is red. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when you're trying too hard. And I think here in the West, that is our, more than anything, we try too hard to force a solution. We try
Right.
to make it happen.
Right.
So on that side over here in red, you have the side effect of that is you can get angry, you get impatient, you look for solutions too fast, you try to cut to the chase. And on the
Right.
other end of the dial is brown. And that's where you don't try at all. You're just like, oh, I don't hear anything. I'm just going to go nap. It's almost like disconnected, depressed. You tend to be depressed, unfocused. So you want to be focused, but not too focused. I know that sounds really odd. And so, you're coming from the red side because it's a very organized, efficient way. And I come from that too, that German background.
Right.
I'm told, do a to-do list and check them off and make sure you get it done. But you have to, sometimes for you, it might be easier to ease up a little bit. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, take your walks and when you're on those walks, just listen to, ask a
Right.
question. In fact, that's a great thing you can do, is ask a question when you go on that walk. Say, what should I do about this blah? And then walk. Don't try to answer it. Just listen. Just, what should I do? Keep asking over and over. What should I do about that new client that I don't care for? What should I do about that new client I don't care for? And it will come to you. But it's almost like you have to stop pushing. Right?
Okay. So let's kind of shift the focus more from spirituality to creativity now,
Yeah.
and art. And So come back to the point where, you know, and you touched on it, but the point in time when you connected creativity and your art and spirit, uh, talk about that a little bit.
Well, I would go to I went to Santa Fe for years, one time a week, and I would take a retreat. And I had a really wonderful mentor, and she told me one day to watch your process. And so I started watching how I work. And what we were talking about, like why did someday I stand in front of the easel and I'm like la la la, and it's beautiful. And then other days I'm like, and there's tension and the colors are dark. And so I started watching my process. So when you talk about creativity and spirituality, we are all creators, right? Not just a painting. When you are playing your music, you're creating music. And so for you, and I don't mean you don't even have to be writing the music, just performing the music, you are a creator, because you're taking the sound from someone else wrote and you're taking an instrument and you're translating it through you. So it's God as you, right? And you're just letting it flow out in your own interpretation. And the way it comes out in that folk music for you, Ray, is going to be totally different from if I did folk music, because it has your essence in there.
Right.
So where I came from this is I started watching my process and realizing that I also realized that when I was in that place, and we all call it the state of flow. When I was in that place of flow, I felt this powerful connection that something was coming through me. And I don't know if you ever feel that way when you play your music, but I'm like, where did that come from? Like, where did that come from? Suddenly I do these most beautiful colors or a beautiful pattern. And I'm like, what the heck did that come out of? And it was more than me. And so I call it the spiritual connection of this spirit. And I love to define this. Spirit to me is the non-manifested world. Right. And so I'm like, there's spirit flowing through me. I'm a spiritual artist when I do that. So to be a spiritual artist, it's about practicing, like you said, every day. You come in and every day you get up and you practice. How do I get to that perfect flow where I'm in the green? I'm not pushing too hard. I'm not depressed. I'm not ineffective. I'm not focused. Somewhere right in between. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I use it every moment that I stand before the easel. And what I tell my artists is you can take those same techniques and you can use them in your real life. Oh, I need to buy a new house. Okay, well, are you pushing too hard, or are you not trying enough? Like, are you not paying attention to housing prices or anything, or are you too intense and writing lists and looking, it's that right and perfect place,
Yes. Something that you just said there. Okay, here I go again, shifting gears, shifting
That's all right.
directions.
We got a smart audience. They're going to jump with us, right?
Yes. Well, and so one of the big points on spirituality, and I think this is true not just for myself, but for most people, is we see ourselves as separate from spirit. And it takes us a long time to eventually discover, no, spirit is totally within us. We have to allow it to, allow ourselves to know it, allow ourselves to feel it, allow ourselves to express it. Just as you said, yes, I found more and more, when I'm really in the state of flow in my performances, it's something much more than just me that's expressing that music, and it becomes something much more powerful. When I've always tried to engage with my audience, but when I'm really in flow and not worrying so much about all the, like when I'm learning a new song, then I'm having to pay total attention to the words and the music, and so you're not totally in flow when you're in your mind thinking about that. But once that song is learned, and if you allow it, you can really. So I found that my engagement with the audience becomes more uh, it becomes different. It becomes more engaged, more, uh, I don't know the word even for it, but it's a better thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how it works that way. And maybe you're right. We were talking yesterday, and you said that because you're focused on the music, but you do get to that point, right, where you know the music. You just know it. You just
Mhm. Right.
and whether or not you're memorizing it, or you see the note and you respond so immediately.
Right.
You're in it's, I call it that. I say you listen to spirit, you react, and then you react. You
Right.
react to and you're just going, there's a dance, right? And
Right.
so when you perform, you're listening to the audience,
Yes.
you're and the music, and you're in the God within you, and you're letting them all dance together, right? It's
That's
magic.
that's absolutely right. And just from a spiritual point of view, we could spend a lot of time talking about the subject of awakening, and we've kind of bounced around it. But awakening, uh, you know, one definition is being more conscious, but a really truer definition is, and it's using the analogy of a wave on the ocean. If we are a wave on the ocean, then awakening is remembering that we're not just a wave, we are the ocean expressing in a unique form. And many people, especially anyone who grew up with a religious background, you know, Christianity pretty much teaches people that they're separate from God. They have to follow all these rules. And but to discover that God is within is true awakening. And to really, you can understand it conceptually, but to really know it, that's what awakening is.
Right.
And so I don't know. You sound pretty awakened.
uh,
So,
well,
but
well, it's funny. I do think I love what you said. People sometimes will acknowledge it. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. God's in me, right? But then they'll speak with such dualistic terminology. You'll hear it in their languaging, where they'll sit there and they'll say, oh, this is a problem, so I'm like pleading to God, or, it's that. Do they really? Have they really? And I even go to a very uber new thought church, but some of the music, you'll see the lyrics in there, and it's
uh,
dualistic. If
uh
he loves me, he support, and you know,
right,
to truly absorb that awakened thought, and people are afraid of it, right? They're
they are.
afraid.
Well, and we were taught to be afraid.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, Christian churches still teach that it's blasphemous to
Uh-huh.
say something like "I am God." Now, I am not all totality of God. I am God expressing as this one human being on earth, and I don't, I'm not even as a human being, I'm not even totally awake to all the godness within me,
Right.
because I'm here to experience life as a human being. And so but this is touching on a conversation that needs to be talked about and heard much, much more, I think, in the world today. Our definitely the world shows all the symptoms of being so disconnected from itself, from the true nature of God within, that if we were fully connected into that, and knowing that we are God, and knowing that you are God and every other person is God, we wouldn't be having all the violence and every
Right.
kind of dysfunctional kind of culture and world that we have. So it's, we're touching on something very important, and we could do the rest of the show on that. But I want,
I know. Well, I love it because you're exactly right. I think a lot of the traditional religions have taught separation, and you're right that it's blasphemy. But I think they're going with the idea that I'm saying I'm God, but nobody else is.
right,
But when you say that God is all there is, that's a recognition that yes, even that woman that just cut me off in traffic, I recognize the God in her. And when we start seeing that, even with people that are demonstrating or making bad decisions, that there is still God within them.
That's right.
We don't just we don't bomb an entire country or anything, because we realize that there is God everywhere, and that's the next level, right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, shifting gears back.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you some questions because in your material you provided to me, you mentioned something called asemic writing, which I'd never heard that word. What and you talked about it relates to discovering creativity within yourself. Talk about that.
Yeah.
I've never heard
Yeah.
this. Never heard this before.
Oh, okay. Semic writing was I think it was in the 90s, and I wish I could quote the person that founded it, but it's a process where, and they call it a semic drawing or writing. I have a video on my YouTube channel, but it's where you scribble. And
Is
so
it
let me
the
go
same as
ahead.
automatic writing?
Automatic writing often has meaning, whereas when I do automatic writing, I might be feeling something talking through me, and I'm writing out sentence structure. This is more just, remember when you were a little kid and you
Mm-hmm.
sat down with the crayons. This is really young, and you just kind of scribbled and made little
Right.
shapes. Well, so I've done some studying of child development and growth, and what happens as we grow up is we have this wonderful innate creative essence that is totally unique. And I believe it's the unique spirit within you,
Yes.
because each one of us does have God within us, but a unique expression of God within us. So what happens is, we grow up, though, we learn to hide it. So we scribble with joy, and then
Right.
someone says, do it in the lines,
Right.
right? And those colors don't match, and make it this way, and it has to be smooth strokes. And by the time we're 12 years old, we are like, either we walk away from art, right, which what I did,
Right.
or we're such perfectionists. It has to be a very ultra realistic drawing, exactitude, and there's no in between. So when I teach, I have this exercise where I do these tablets, and I ask my students to go back to that place, and I give them crayons, sometimes even crayons, and we scribble and start feeling shapes that come to you. Because ironically, like, if you look at this painting behind me, that kind of started as a form of asemic writing or scribbling. And then what happens is, you're going to find that there are certain shapes, Ray, that are native to different people. Some people might like a curve. Some people might want to do squares. Some people might want to do straight lines all the way up and down. I'm helping people develop what I call a visual vocabulary as an artist, that they can take and grow, so that you're not trying. So many artists today, they imitate other artists. Oh, I do something that looks like Picasso. I do Matisse. I want to teach artists to do themselves. Who are you? Find it. Be patient. Find it. Sometimes people like to work with words. Sometimes, you, from your background, you might enjoy numbers. It sounds like you might actually like to draw numbers. You're very numeric. Musicians are very numerical. They're mathematical. They're going to want to be creators with numbers and sound. Obviously,
Right.
sound is very important to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, right. And yes, and music is based uh on vibration frequencies and number relationships. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Right.
But that's a great process because one aspect of our creative self that you touched on there is that we disconnect from our imagination at a young age, and reconnecting to that can be very powerful.
Oh, definitely. And it's so funny. I'll see people sitting there scribbling, and you can just see in their face the joy. And one of the things I do that's really interesting, I did it on my last retreat, is I play music. You're going to appreciate this because you're a musician. So I have a speaker in the room, and I'll play a song that's really sad.
Oh,
And I'll tell them to scribble. I mean, it's, Nina Simone, something really sad. And then I'll do that for, like, 3 minutes, and then I'll change the song to something that's like, da, 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 a 70s love song. And they're like, what? And so I want them to learn to feel emotion and how it flows through you to music, right? We feel a song, and suddenly, and I will tell people too, if you're painting, be careful the music you listen to. You don't want to change the type
Uh,
of music halfway through a painting, because it will show. It will show. Right?
That's right. Right.
And so it's so funny. I'll watch them, and then I'll play another song that's angry, and I love to watch them jumping through the emotion and the asemic drawing out at the same time.
Wow.
And that
That's
cool?
that's great. Yes. Wow. Uh, yeah,
You'll have
and
to try it.
you use the phrase about your unique creative DNA.
Yeah. That is a term I got from Twyla Tharp. She's a choreographer, dancer. She wrote a book about the creative expression, and your creative DNA is what I call that uniqueness. And I love that term because when we're so scientific in the West here, when we hear the word DNA, we realize it's totally unique to you. You know, how you were born, and the way your combination is, Ray, of music and order and organization and communication skills, how you can present yourself creatively is going to be very different from me, you know? And once you acknowledge it, you don't have to worry about someone imitating you, or you don't have to, you have that spark of God will make you successful, you know?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Um, let's see here. Now I understand that in your book, you give the readers some tips on 5 ways to access creative inspiration. Tell us what that's about.
well, that's the book has more than 5 ways. Each chapter discusses different things. You know, I have the book here, and we just talked about this morning, just earlier in this conversation, moments of awe. So
Mhm.
there's a chapter on just sitting down and looking at life, and noticing what is awe-inspiring around you. It's all about getting back to that level of green that we talked about on that scale. Another chapter might be resisting judgment, you know, and us that are in the red, I'll say us, Ray, because I'm with you on that. Us that are in the red, we have a lot of judgment. And so when we make a mistake, we jump in and criticize it. You have to just stop, turn off the judger in your head. I'm playing the music. And if you make a mistake, realize it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when I play the music wrong, because the feeling and your state communicates much stronger than the note,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yes.
So
Absolutely right. Yes,
yeah.
it
So
does.
there, yeah. So when I say there's so many different ways that you can do, uh, learning to listen is one of the activities I talk about in the book. I talk about the power of emotion. Um, and I also talk about, I'll share this with you, a body of work. Also recognizing that you bring your body to the art room. Um, and when your body and the arm is not working, like mine was this morning, it just felt sore. You recognizing that, and going with accepting it, accepting your body. Because I have talked to some people that have certain issues. I've talked to some groups of those people at the senior home that maybe she can't paint as well as she used to. And I've told her, pick up a pair of scissors, do collage work, you know, recognizing that you bring your body into the art studio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, uh, we're starting to run out of time here, so I
Yeah.
want to pay a little bit of attention to that. But this has been incredibly fascinating to talk about all of this, because we don't think about this kind of thing very often, and and we don't talk about it very often. Uh, there are relationships to uh, our creativity and spirituality, but to life more generally, more broadly. I mean, to our own nature, with a body and a mind and spirit. Uh, so much we don't integrate those things, and you're talking about ways that really help us use all of ourselves and integrate those aspects of ourselves more. I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, you're right. Thank you for noticing that. That's kind of where I'm leaning to, maybe my second book, which will be about the integrating all
wow.
of you, your emotions, your mind, your body, because here in the West, we ignore the body. Like, oh, who cares if the body's failing? No, the body has to be part of it. All comes to the creative process.
Yeah, it makes me think about it's only been in recent years and in recent months that I've kind of woken up to the idea that, well, there are people who are shamans and spiritual energy healers. And, for many, many years, I never paid any attention to that. I just kind of saw it as an offshoot. Well, but I've really begun to learn that's much more important than I was given it credit to. That the more we pay attention to our body, and one way is to pay attention to the energy in our body. And so many of our physical problems are wrapped up with never processing emotions in the good way. And so those negative emotions are stored in our body, and that has impact on our health, etc. And so learning to appreciate that, like you're pointing out, is a very important thing. And it can, well, I've learned, yeah, we can change our vibration in many different ways. And there are ways that are based on quantum energy as well as just focusing on love, for example. But
Right. I just love what you just said. I have to jump in real quick. You said changing our vibration in different ways. And you're right. One of the big awakenings for me was realizing I used to try to think my way out of every problem.
me too.
And then I realized my body, and when you talk about walking, my body can lead my brain. I love
Mhm.
that term. My body can lead my brain, meaning that if you're caught up with a problem while you're listening to this podcast, something's upsetting you, just ignore your thoughts for a minute and focus on your body. Maybe go jogging, go running, go walking. But your body, or doing yoga, it will heal you. The body can bring that emotional release that you talked about, where you're letting those emotions come out. And I love it. Yes. Yes, yes.
Very good. Yes. Yes. This,
There's a
oh,
lot in here, but yeah.
okay. So let's, since we're probably coming to a time when we need to stop, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with the audience, and then also tell us your website, etc. But
Yeah, I love what you said, and I will repeat that to the audience, is to recognize that we're all creators. And if you're listening to this podcast and you think I'm not an artist, you might not be an artist, but you're a creator. You've created your life, you create your reality, you create your relationships, your family, your job. And so learning to be more in touch with your body, like you said, and your mind and your spirit and your consciousness, and staying in that love place, all those things will affect that. So you're going to create matter what. As long as you're alive on this planet, you are creating. But why don't you consciously create, so you do things that you love and that you make a life that you love? And that's, like you said, by being more self-aware, more self-aware.
absolutely.
And
All
so I
right.
love that. So I do have a website, and it's called spiritualartisttoday.com. I do art retreats. I teach art. I'm going to Santa Fe in 2 weeks to teach an art class. I just opened a TikTok channel for teaching art techniques and spirituality, so people can follow me,
Huh.
Spiritual Artist 123 on TikTok. So
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
but yeah, it's funny, Ray. I have, for myself, I had to realize that my creative DNA is both. And for a long time, I wanted to be just spiritual, and another time I wanted to be just an artist. And I suddenly realized I'm both. I'm both. And so I have to integrate, like I have with my office, integrate both sides of me into one thing, and be okay with that.
Okay, so um, I haven't paid too much attention to TikTok up to this date. I've seen a couple of videos on there, but
Uh-huh.
how would they find you on TikTok?
Yeah, it's the @ spiritual artist 123. That's my handle.
Spiritual artist.
One, two, three.
Okay.
And you know what I see for you, Ray, is you're going to be writing some music now. Yeah. Integrating your spiritual side with your
Yes.
music.
Well, CJ or Christopher,
Yes.
you go by both.
Yes, I do.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. We've talked about all kinds of interesting things, and I could talk for hours more with you. We have a lot in common, but it is good for everyone to really hear some of these messages, and especially about creativity, because so many people, do respond to that as I'm not creative.
Right.
And, I've got to come back to a spiritual point here. In the book, Conversations with God, book 4, Awaken the Species, God says, and I'm paraphrasing now, that he created us to specifically have free will to create a life on our own on Earth, the life that we want. And it was very much focused on being creative, uh, and knowing that we are creative beings and using our creativity and finding that creativity. So we've gone all around the whole spectrum of creativity here and spirituality. But this is good for people to hear about, and to recognize we are all creative. We just have to find ways to get in touch with that and to grow it if we want. Your asemic writing, uh, I had never heard of that before, and I think that's a fantastic way to get in touch with our artistic self.
Yeah, it is.
So,
It's good.
so thank you for sharing that and all everything else that you've shared in terms of your wisdom. Um, and I hate to draw it to an end, but we better.
All
So,
right.
to you and to my listening audience, have a great day and a great life.